Hey everybody! Today we're going to revisit the topic of multiplication as scaling. This is something that I got a lot of questions about during study hall. In addition, I noticed that when I was grading your practice sheet for lesson 11-2, people seem to have a lot of problems with this skill. So we're going to take another look at it today. If you haven't already done so, please go back and check last week's Wednesday folder. Take a look at the grade you got for the practice sheet for lesson 11-2. Once we've done these review activities today, go back and resubmit that practice sheet to get a better grade if you're able to. The idea of multiplication as scaling, when you change the scale of something, you make it bigger or smaller. So that means that when the scale changes, it's going to either increase in size or decrease in size. And we know how this works when we're multiplying whole numbers. Anytime we're multiplying two whole numbers together, the product or the answer is going to increase or get bigger. And we're all really comfortable with that. So for example, 4 groups of 3 gives us 12. Our product or our answer is bigger than either of our two factors. Our two factors are 4 and 3, and you can see the product is bigger than both of those factors. When we multiply fractions, though, things start to get a little funky. And until you get used to it, it can be confusing. So let's look at how multiplying fractions changes the scale of the product or the answer. Let's say I took this multiplication expression and I changed it to 1/2 times 3. Is our product or our answer going to get bigger or smaller? If I take a portion or a fraction of 3 brownies, for example, will the amount of brownies that I have get bigger or get smaller? If I take a portion of 3 brownies, I'm going to have a smaller amount when I'm done. So 1/2 times 3 is going to give me an amount that's less than 3. So let's look at how you should use that information to fill in the blank up here. If you multiply a number by a fraction less than 1, the product will be blank than that number. Okay, let's think about this for a second. If you multiply a number, so we'll just name that number, N for number. If you multiply a number by a fraction that's less than 1, so I could just call that like 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, any fraction that's less than 1, the product or your answer is going to be less than the number that you started with. Another way of saying this is a portion or a fraction of a number, n, is going to be less than the number. If I take 1/2 of 8, that's going to be less than 8. If I take 1/3 of 15, that's going to be less than 15. Okay, so that makes sense. Now let's look at the second item here. If you multiply a number by a fraction equal to 1, if you multiply a number by a fraction equal to 1, the product will be blank that number. Now on your practice sheet, they gave you some examples to kind of investigate this skill, and the examples were fractions equal to 1, like 3/3, 4/4, 5/5. These are all fractions equal to 1 whole. So if you multiply a number, we'll just call that number n, by any fraction that's equal to 1 whole, like it could be 4 over 4 or 5 over 5, the product is going to be exactly equal to the number that you started with, because any number times 1 equals itself, the number that you started with. So here you're going to drag this square where it says equal to, drag it up here. I can't do that on I don't think that will, these don't drag, yeah. Because I'm doing this on a different app, but you guys are working in Google Slides, so you should be able to drag that into the right spot. Okay, let's look at our third item. If you multiply a number by a fraction greater than 1, if you multiply a number, so we'll name that number n, some number. If you multiply a number by a fraction greater than 1, so it could be like, I think the examples on your student sheet were all mixed numbers, so we'll stick with mixed numbers. Let's say we did like 1.5. That's a number greater than 1. If you multiply a number by a fraction greater than 1, the product will be what? Greater than or less than that number? The product is going to be greater than the number that you started. So coming back to the idea of scale, if I had a pan of brownies and I increased its scale by 1.5 times, I'm going to end up with a much bigger pan of brownies than what I started with. So that the product is going to be greater than the number that you started with. Okay, let's look at the next slide here. This says, without solving, place each piece into the correct bucket. We need to find expressions that equal 15 and expressions that do not equal 15. Okay, so let's take a look at these expressions. They're kind of layered on top of each other, so I'm going to copy them down so it's easier to see. This first one is 7/7 times 15. Now remember, I said I wanted you to train your brain. Whenever you see a fraction like this where the numerator is the same as the denominator, you should immediately think, 7/7 is equivalent to 1 whole. And I know that 1 times 15 equals 15. So this first expression here should go in the expression that equals 15 column. 7/7 times 15 equals 15. And then the next one, the one that's in front of it, says 18/9 times 15. And I know that that's going to go in the orange bucket because that is not going to exactly equal 15. Okay, so you're going to take a look at all these expressions and drag the ones that are going to exactly equal 15 into the green bucket. Then we'll pick up tomorrow and continue working on some more understanding of multiplication as scaling.